It's time for yet another movie tier list. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I am going through all of the movie trilogies that I've ever seen and doing a big old tier list ranking of them. Now, I just recently did a movie franchises ranked tier list, so if you guys haven't seen that, you should check that out. But a lot of you guys in the comments of that video said, hey, do this with movie trilogies, because one of my rules of that video was I'm not including specifically movie trilogies. So today I've got about 25 or so movie trilogies that I'm going through. I've got my tiers. I'm about to dive right into those. But before I do, hit that like button, comment down below your favorite movie trilogy, as well as what tiers you would put these trilogies in. Do you agree or disagree with my placement? Subscribe and hit that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 85,000 subscribers here on the channel. And check out my Patreon link down below for extra videos, early access to videos, the Discord server, and much more. Anything goes a very long way over there. But without further ado, let's dive into this tier. All right, so the tiers I have are S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, E tier, and F tier. I usually personalize my tiers, but lately I've been doing sort of the regular standard letters, just because with this vast variety of film trilogies, it just makes it a little bit easier to kind of gauge where to place them. But starting off, we've got the X-Men trilogy. Now, this is the first, second, and third X-Men film that came out in the 2000s, and I'm going to talk about some X-Men content later, but this is a confined trilogy within the greater franchise. I'm specifically talking about X-Men, X2, X-Men The Last Stand. If I'm being honest, I rarely ever revisit these. I know X2 has high praise. I haven't seen that movie in over a decade, so I'll be rewatching it pretty soon. The first X-Men, I've rewatched parts of recently, doesn't hold up very well, and The Last Stand is alright. So it's not S tier, it's not A tier, it's not B tier, it's not F tier, because there's quality enjoyment to be had. I think that this is a D tier trilogy. It starts out pretty lackluster, ends on a whimper, and then the middle film is the one that gets all the praise, but I personally barely remember it, and I do think it was definitely the strongest, but I always thought it was a little overrated in terms of one of the greater comic book films of all time. A lot of people throw that term around with X2, and I just never saw it. So maybe the rewatch could change that, but staying in the comic book realm, next we've got the Dark Knight trilogy. You guys already know this is probably the greatest comic book trilogy of all time. The Dark Knight is an outstanding achievement in filmmaking, and Heath Ledger's performance solidifies that. The Dark Knight Rises ends the trilogy with a bang and begins as even a very, very good origin story. This is an S-tier trilogy, and I think most people would have to go S-tier with it. It is what so many comic book films are still trying to achieve today. Anytime we get a new comic book trilogy, the comparison is, how does it compare to the Dark Knight trilogy? And usually it falls a little bit short, just because it is fantastic Christopher Nolan storytelling. There are moments that give me chills in every film. They're quotable, inspiring, and this is like some of the best Batman content that we've ever graced our eyes on. It's an S-tier trilogy. Moving on, though, we've got the Hobbit trilogy. The sort of black sheep of the Middle-earth universe, because it's so divisive. I enjoy the Hobbit movies for what they are. I don't think they're perfect by any means. I'm actually going to throw them in the C tier. I think that the first film, it's a little too long in my opinion, and the fatal flaw of this trilogy is that it sort of abandons the practicality, the practical effects of the Lord of the Rings films, and even though they're still directed by Peter Jackson, these movies have this sort of glossy feel to them where it's definitely CGI, whereas with Lord of the Rings, it felt so immersive and real with how many, background actors were actually working. That's a whole topic for another time, but I would say Desolation of Smaug is my favorite. Talk about a cliffhanger ending in the theater, and then Battle of the Five Armies is by far the worst. I've seen that movie once in theaters, have never had the desire to go back and rewatch it, so I'm comfortable putting this in C tier, middle of the road. It's definitely a step down from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but gets too much hate in my opinion, and it's still fun Middle-earth adventures, just really doesn't hold a candle or hold a ring to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Does that make sense? Probably not, but we're going to keep it in. Next, we've got the Creed trilogy. This is a new trilogy. In fact, 3 or 4 trilogies on this list became trilogies because of movies that came out in 2023 so far. The Creed trilogy, it's 2 for 3 for me. So the first Creed, it's still the best Creed to me. It should have got Sylvester Stallone an Oscar win for his performance as Rocky. It's a damn shame he didn't. And then you've got Creed 2, which just as uplifting and motivational as the first. It's a little bit cheesier. You bring back Ivan Drago. You've got his son Victor facing off against Adonis. It's very personal to Adonis Creed because his father was obviously killed in the ring by Ivan Drago, the father of Victor. So very personal film. And then Creed 3 is the weak link to me. It directorially makes some choices that I'm not crazy about, especially the final fight scene, like the way it's shot. And I can't help but feel this movie is just so rushed and a little ridiculous. I know that a lot of Rocky films can be a little out there in terms of believability. This third film never really landed with me. So I would say B tier for the Creed franchise feels appropriate. 2 big hitters for me, like 4.5 out of 5 type movies, and then the third's a step down. But hey, it captures what I love about Rocky and almost like enhances what a legacy sequel should be. You bring back Balboa, but by the end of it is Adonis Creed's journey that we're following. So really respect what they did there, and there's a lot of like hype fist pump moments in this trilogy. So B tier is appropriate. Moving on, we've got the Indiana Jones trilogy. Now I didn't say this up front, but there are trilogies on this list where there's technically 4th or 5th films. However, my rule is if there is a long period of time between the 3rd and 4th film, that means that the first 3 films are still a trilogy because they could have marked the end of this franchise. That is 100% the case with Indiana Jones. You've got Raiders, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade. Those all came out in the 80s, and it wasn't until 2008 that we got the next film. I almost said Last Crusade, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then years later even, we got Dial of Destiny. So Crusade is like a definitive ending to a trilogy, and because of that, that's why it's on this list. Look, if you know me, Indiana Jones, especially the first 3 films, means so much to me. He's my favorite movie character of all time. I'm pretty comfortable in saying that right now. And I just worshipped this man growing up. Whether it was going to Disney World and witnessing the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, or having the hat and whip running around my backyard acting like I was trying to find the fertility idol at the opening of Raiders. My imagination ran wild with this character as a kid. The Lego games, the merchandise, everything. I was obsessed with Indiana Jones, and this trilogy means the world to me. So because of that, it's going top of S tier. I think those first 3 films are the pinnacle of adventure filmmaking. The Spielberg charm and magic shines through, and Harrison Ford as that character is one of the most iconic performances of all time. This is pure magical filmmaking. It's escapism. Every time I watch these movies, it takes me back to a happy place, and it goes to the top of S tier because of that. Moving on, we've got the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. This is one of the better comic book trilogies of all time. Look, I know The Dark Knight's like the gold standard, that's S tier. I can't go that high with Raimi, but I'm going A tier with the Raimi trilogy. You've got the first 2 Spider-Man films, which are still top 4 Spider-Man films to date for me, and Spider-Man 3 is the clear weak link, but there's studio interference, and the movie's memeability factor kind of outweighs the actual negatives. Like, I can laugh at this movie and its stupidity, whether that's Topher Grace, his character, Eddie Brock going to a church and praying to God, saying, God, I want you to kill Peter Parker. The whole Bully Maguire portion of this movie, like, that is memeability to the max. So it's cheesy and overstuffed, but at the same time, it tells the story of forgiveness and redemption with, Sandman's character and Peter himself sort of forgiving the person who actually killed Uncle Ben. Beautiful arc for a lot of characters in this film. I really like the score in this one, and all around, it is still a fitting conclusion to the trilogy, even though we were robbed of a 4th film. Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 are some of my favorite Spider-Man films to date. I mean, you've got Green Goblin and Doc Ock, that 1-2 punch with those villains. It's unmatched. They feel comic booky, and it's almost a perfect trilogy. 3 is just a step down. So that's why the Raimi trilogy lands in A tier. Moving on, we got the Back to the Future trilogy. Look, the first film is an all-time classic, one of the best scripts ever written, and one of the most rewatchable films ever made. It is iconic, we all know and love it, and we could quote it for days. Great Scott, 1.21 gigawatts. Then you got Back to the Future Part 2, very solid follow-up, clearly a bit of a step down. And then you got Back to the Future 3, a little bit of a step down as well, but still very, very fun and enjoyable. So if I'm looking at this as a whole trilogy, you've got the first film. I mean, everyone has seen this movie. It's iconic as hell. Then you got Part 2 and 3, steps down for me. I know some people try and put 2 on the same level as 1. I disagree. 3 and 2 are movies that I enjoy to watch as sort of, closing out this trilogy. But if I had to erase them, I could, because the first Back to the Future is that perfect. So I would go, honestly, I rewatched this trilogy a lot. I gotta go A tier with Back to the Future. I think I go Raimi over right now. I rewatch both these trilogies, or at least try to annually. So the Spidey trilogy is a little fresher on my mind. I say this, though, and this is the reason Raimi's above it. Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 combined are better than Back to the Future 2 and 3. Then you've got Spider-Man 3, which is the worst of all those 6 films, probably. But still, the first Back to the Future, great movie, but as a whole trilogy, I think I might prefer Raimi right now. It's really close. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you go Raimi or Back to the Future? It's extremely close, but right now I lean that Raimi trilogy. Personal preference, of course, reigns supreme there. Next, we've got the sequel trilogy. This is tough to talk about. It's disastrous. It's a disastrous trilogy. My expectations were through the roof for The Force Awakens, and they delivered. I really loved that movie. I saw it 3 times in theaters, and it was a dream come true seeing The Force Awakens. Then you've got The Last Jedi, the movie that derailed Star Wars and the fandom forever. It's pretty bad, unfortunately. And then you've got The Rise of Skywalker, which is a dumpster fire. It's the worst Star Wars movie to date, and I laugh out loud at so many decisions that were made in this film. So it's far from the top of this tier list. I think it'd be unfair to go F tier, but at the same time, it genuinely has two of the worst Star Wars movies I've ever seen. So as much as I love The Force Awakens, I think I might actually have to just say the sequel trilogy as a whole is F tier, because there was no plan, there was no clear trajectory. It was so clear that they were just throwing ideas at the wall. The resurrection of Palpatine and the whole plot, so unnecessary and frankly laughable. The fake out deaths in Rise of Skywalker, the handling of Luke Skywalker's character in Last Jedi. I mean, I could go on and on. You've got a whole portion of The Last Jedi on the Canto Bight planet, which is just something that could be erased from the movie, and we would all be fine with it. I don't understand how this trilogy failed so hard. It really didn't have that hard of a task. You bring back Han Solo, Luke, and Leia. They have a prominent role throughout all three films together, but then you introduce and sort of pass on the torch to this new generation of characters. And it failed to do that. It failed. You killed Han in the first one, you killed Luke in the next one, you killed Leia in the next one, and they were never really together, which is what made the original trilogy special. And I don't know how they watched the end of Return of the Jedi and were like, you know what? A great idea would be to have everyone sort of in disarray across the galaxy. That'll definitely make Star Wars fans happy. Stupid, in my opinion. So, F tier. There was no trajectory. It's one of the least planned out trilogies I've ever seen. F tier as a whole, Just because there's some greatness in Force Awakens, it's weighed down heavily by two really bad movies. Moving on, we got the Iron Man trilogy. I typically have this pretty low in my MCU trilogy ranking. Look, I love the first Iron Man. It's still a top 5 MCU movie for me. Damn near top 3, actually. The Iron Man 2 film I have nostalgia for, but it's not good. And Iron Man 3 is actually my least favorite of the three. I can never get past the stupid Mandarin reveal in that movie, and I have creative issues with the film. This, I look at and I go, I'm going to watch the Iron Man trilogy over the X-Men trilogy. And then I look above it and I think the Hobbit trilogy, do I watch Iron Man or Hobbit? I think I go C tier with Iron Man because I am more forgiving and I'm almost an apologist for Iron Man 2. It's because it was the first MCU movie I saw in theaters. I have a soft spot for it. The first Iron Man is so great. 2, I think, is overhated, and 3 is eh. I think C tier is appropriate. I'll go C tier over the Hobbit trilogy. And I look at that, I go, I could watch Iron Man 3. I can stomach it. I don't know if I could watch Battle of the Five Armies again. I probably will fairly soon, because eventually I want to do a big Middle-earth ranking, so I'd have to have some fresh thoughts. But truthfully, the lows of the Hobbit trilogy are lower than the Iron Man trilogy. And I love Tony Stark as a character so much. He's my favorite MCU character that I gotta go C tier. But next we got the OG trilogy, the OG Star Wars trilogy. This always reigns supreme for me. I'm putting it at the top right now. It's my favorite trilogy of all time, and it's never going to be topped. It is perfect filmmaking. In fact, it's a big reason I'm sitting here today talking to you guys with the Film Stock channel, because it inspired me. This was like the first time that I was exposed to movies that kind of opened my mind to, wow, how do they make this? Like, it sparked a curiosity in me. I adore this trilogy. New Hope, Empire, Return of the Jedi. You can't get better than that. The final moments of Return of the Jedi when they're all dancing and happy, that final shot, it's just so beautiful. Luke Skywalker's hero's journey in this trilogy is unmatched. It really is. The moment, the binary sunset scene in New Hope, when he looks out and he sees like the two paths essentially that his life could take, and he realizes the role that he must play in it all. It's beautiful. Empire Strikes Back, many claim to be the greatest film of all time. It's got a fantastic twist. And Return of the Jedi is an overhated, even though a lot of people love it, it's still overhated. I've seen some people go, Last Jedi is better than it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whoa. The disrespect for that movie. Less overhated, more disrespected. Not enough recognition. That's Return of the Jedi. This is hands down my favorite trilogy. I think the best trilogy ever put to screen. And I stand by that. I really do. So moving on, we got the Bourne trilogy. Another one of those trilogies where we got some films after. One was like the Bourne Legacy, sort of a spin-off. And then we got Jason Bourne. It was such a departure from the trilogy that this trilogy, again, has a definitive ending and sort of stands on its own. I enjoyed this trilogy a lot growing up, and Ultimatum was my favorite. I like the way they used that song. I think it's called, it's by Moby. Is it called, like, Extreme Ways or something? I'll put it right here. It's used at the end of every film, and I always, like, listen to that song in my car. Like, right when I got my license, I think I did Jason Bourne was coming out, and so I like just blasted that in my car, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. They're great action films. Matt Damon is great in the role. I would go B tier with the Bourne trilogy, probably above, honestly, above the Creed films. Like Identity, Supremacy, Ultimatum, like the consistency of that trilogy, there's really no misses in the trilogy. The reason the Bourne films kind of sour for me is because Legacy and Jason Bourne exist. Moving on though, we've got the Pirates trilogy. If you guys watch the movie franchises tier list, you would know I said that Trilogy is very special to me, and I don't acknowledge 4 and 5. So I don't have to acknowledge 4 and 5 here. I'm talking about Curse of the Black Pearl, Dead Man's Chest, and At World's End, and because of that, we're going S tier, baby. I'm going above The Dark Knight. This is a personal tier list, so it's my pick. This is an S tier trilogy. Curse of the Black Pearl, one of the best adventure, sort of family-friendly, big-budget films we've ever seen. Dead Man's Chest, damn near better. You've got the introduction of Davy Jones, the Kraken. It's a darker movie. At World's End, a little trippy at times. Definitely the weakest of the three, and a little too long, but badass. Through and through, Pirates 1 through 3, major part of my childhood. I honestly crave going back and watching these movies in theaters. I saw At World's End in theaters, and it was just the coolest damn thing at the time. This trilogy is special. I try and watch it yet again, every year, every other year at least. We don't get movies like this anymore with this massive budget that you can feel. And Pirates, we don't have any Pirates movies except for the Caribbean ones, and they're so damn good. Captain Jack Sparrow's iconic. I mean, it's the lovable characters, the humor, the heart, the action. It's epic in scale. We just don't get franchises like this much anymore, where they were like events. And this isn't like Marvel. This isn't a superhero thing. This was before that time. These Pirates films were events when I was growing up. I love the trilogy so much, and it's got to go S tier. Moving on, though, we've got the Ocean trilogy, one of the coolest movie series ever. You've got Matt Damon, George Clooney, Ben Affleck. I mean, the list... Whoa, not Ben Affleck. Brad Pitt, excuse me. I notice how I always associate Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in my head. It's a weird thing, and I think we all can kind of agree. Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Matt Damon, there we go. And Don Cheadle, a lot of others in this cast. Casey Affleck, maybe that's what I was thinking when I said Ben Affleck. The Ocean's trilogy is just damn cool. The first movie, one of the sleekest heist movies, very suave. 13, you got Al Pacino as this villainous character. It's great. 12's the weak link to me personally. But all in all, it's a really solid trilogy. I'd go B tier over Bourne. And it's funny because these movies were sort of coming out simultaneously, the Oceans and the Bournes. And it was like 2001, 2004, 2007, I want to say, is like each year we got an Oceans movie and a Bourne movie. So Matt Damon's schedule for that period of time was like, oh, he's got a Bourne movie and an Oceans movie coming out every year. I mean, we don't really get heist trilogies, like series of films based around heists. That's what the Oceans movies are. And if you haven't seen them and you want this ensemble early 2000s, like really sleek, suave movie, you got to check out the Oceans movies. They are so damn cool. Steven Soderbergh directs them, and his editing style too. God, I love it. These movies are really fun. So B tier is appropriate for Oceans. Moving on, we've got the Toy Story trilogy. It's a fact of life that Toy Story 1 through 3 is one of the greatest trilogies ever made. I think that's a fact. 4 really came in and tried to ruin the reputation of the trilogy, but in reality, this is an S-tier trilogy. The Toy Story 3 is right alongside Ratatouille for my favorite Pixar film. The first Toy Story is still perfect, and it's the first Pixar film. And Toy Story 2, in the middle, you introduce Jessie, Bullseye, you got Prospector Pete, even the whole Zurg storyline with Owl's Toy Barn and all that stuff. It is a perfect trilogy. And So Long Partner, as Woody sort of plays with the toys one last time, rides off into the sunset, you can't get better than that. These toys went on a journey. 3 was a perfect ending to that. I mean, you got to go S tier. You got to. And I know it's sort of getting crowded up there, but again, original trilogy is the greatest trilogy ever made. These two are personal picks of mine, and Dark Knight's objectively S tier, so I go S tier. Honestly, I look at those movies, I go, I got to set like my personal preference aside here. I really do. Like if Toy Story 4 didn't exist, I'm not kidding. This is going right here. It is. I love Indy. I love Pirates. But I go Temple of Doom and I go At World's End. Those are like a little bit of step down. Toy Story just gets better almost with each film. That trilogy is perfection. Has to go S tier. Has to. Remove Toy Story 4. This is just the first 3. And then think, where would you put it? Let me know in the comments down below. Moving on, we got the prequel trilogy. This is a divisive one. I have a really big soft spot for it. And you're not going to like this because I know there's a lot of prequel fans out there. It's not an S tier trilogy. It's not. Revenge of the Sith is a very, very fitting conclusion. It's epic. I will say this with my full chest. I love Revenge of the Sith. It's extremely overrated online. People say it's the best Star Wars movie. It's not. I mean, people can have their opinions, and I'm not going to attack them, and I'd love to discuss it. But so many people, it was mainly like around the 2020 time period until now, a lot of people have said Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars movie. Go back and rewatch it. It's still good, but it has the prequel sort of slow-moving bore feel, and that's for about an hour of the film. So I enjoy Phantom Menace more than most people. I have a big soft spot for it. I even enjoy Attack of the Clones. I don't rewatch it much the older I get. It's a B-tier trilogy, and I think that's okay. It's damn near C, if I'm being completely honest here. I know I have a big soft spot for it. It's really hard for me to talk about because I grew up, I literally had the toys, I would pause the VHS tape. Look, I look at these, let me run down from the top and figure out where I'm gonna put this. And I'm gonna go basically off rewatchability. Give me the original trilogy over the prequel trilogy, Toy Story over it, Indy over it, Pirates over it, Dark Knight over it, Raimi over it, Back to the Future over it. It's not E, it's not F. I go over D. I take it over Hobbit and Iron Man. So B tier is appropriate. It's just where. And then it comes down to rewatchability. I go, hey, I know these movies probably objectively are not as good as these movies in B tier, but I still enjoy it so much. It's become a little overrated to an extent. The movies have a lot of flaws and really awful dialogue at times, and frankly, can just be boring, bogged down with this political talk. The journey of Anakin Skywalker, especially if you throw the Clone Wars in the mix, his journey from Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader, I love to see it here. Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, you've got Qui-Gon Jinn, some of the best lightsaber duels in the whole franchise. You go B tier, Chris. You do it right now. I'm going top of B tier. I am. So moving on, we got the Captain America trilogy from the MCU. First Avenger, the more I think about it, the less I like it over the years. It's very one note with the villain and just the origin, but it's still cool at times. Winter Soldier, you guys know I feel it's overrated. It's still really, really good, but it's overrated. Civil War is a movie that carries this trilogy, and that's more of an Avengers 2.5 movie. So if I look at this as a trilogy, it's very all over the place because Captain America has those Avengers films in between that sort of progress his character arc as well. So I don't rate this trilogy as highly as other people. I think it's like, I think it's better than the Iron Man trilogy. It's a B-tier trilogy. Look, I know as standalone movies, they're very, very good, but as an actual trilogy, I never really viewed a lot of these MCU ones as like cohesive trilogies. We'll talk about one later that is, and that's why it's going to go pretty high. But for now, I'd probably have to go B-tier, middle of B-tier. Yeah, that feels right. I take Oceans over it. I think it's like on par with Bourne. And then the Creed trilogy, I wish it was just a Creed duology, because I really didn't love Creed 3. Moving on, we got the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'll spare you. It's going in S tier. I know a lot of people will put it number 1. I would put it right here. I will put it over Pirates. Some of the best filmmaking I've ever seen, but it's S tier trilogy, and anyone who would say otherwise is lying. It is an S tier trilogy. I think Return of the King is a fantastic film. I think Fellowship, I'll be honest, I think Fellowship is actually my favorite. I've thought about it a lot lately. And I just love the introduction of the characters. It's simple. It's like a hint of adventure at times. We get a lot of the lore on the ring, and we just get to see the Fellowship together. It's a special movie. Two Towers, weak link, but you've got Battle of Helm's Deep, so it kind of evens out. It's an all-time trilogy. What are we talking about? All of these are S-tier trilogies. Like, I'm so comfortable with it being a top-heavy tier list because we've got some of the best trilogies of all time in it. Moving on, we got the Wolverine trilogy. This is Origins Wolverine, The Wolverine, and Logan. Carried by Logan. I hate to kind of put X-Men so low, but I'd put it over, the original X-Men trilogy just in D tier because Logan's amazing, but it's like the sequel trilogy effect where Origins Wolverine's pretty damn bad, and then The Wolverine's a movie I saw once in theaters and was like, that was okay. So you've got a really bad movie, an okay movie, and then a fantastic comic book film. It's just like, yeah, Hugh Jackman owns it, but D tier. Like I'm not gonna watch those other movies. Only leading up to Deadpool 3 will I rewatch those movies really, except for Logan, which is still a really heavy rewatch. But I look at consistency here, and it's so inconsistent that D tier has to be the case. Again, love Hugh Jackman as this character, but I can't help but like tell the truth. A lot of the movies he's in aren't that good. Logan's amazing. I really enjoy Days of Future Past. That's technically 4 films. There's not really a trilogy in the newer X-Men. That feels right. All right, so next we've got another trilogy that was completed this year, the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. I have an interesting relationship with this one because I've always loved the first movie. It's always been pretty high on my MCU ranking. The second film, it's been a roller coaster relationship for me. Where I stand right now, I love it. It's bordering, if not my number 10 MCU film. Guardians 3 is a perfect conclusion to this trilogy. Rarely do movies make me sort of have such a visceral, emotional reaction in the theater. That goes from me being pissed off and angry, wanting to physically hurt the main villain of the film because of how evil and despicable he is. But it also has me laughing my ass off. It also has me crying, literally wiping tears from my face in the theater. It is a beautiful film. And because of that, it ends so strong. I think I go top of A tier with the Guardians trilogy. It's damn good, and I cannot wait to rewatch Guardians 3 when it comes to Disney+. I think August 2nd. That's only like a few weeks away. You bet your ass I'll be rewatching it, so hype for that. But next we got the Apes trilogy. This is one I don't talk about much here on the channel, but I've seen it. I saw Dawn and War in theaters. I saw Rise, on DVD or whatever at the time. I like the trilogy. I feel weird even talking about it because I haven't seen it since 2017. I rewatched it all, leading up to War, and then I saw War. I honestly think this is a really, really good trilogy, but I was never like on the hype train for it being the best trilogy ever. I mean, Caesar, fantastic character played by Andy Serkis, and the journey he goes on is moving, really. It's got, action-packed scenes, but at the same time, these dramatic, well-acted moments. I enjoy the trilogy a lot. I just don't know. It's not God tier to me. It never has been. It could change when I rewatch it. I don't think it's A tier. I think it's B tier for me right now. That's because Rise is fine. I didn't like Dawn the first time I watched it. I was 14, mind you. And I've seen it, once since in 2017. And then War I really liked. To me, if I don't go back and want to watch something pretty soon, then I'm never really as big of a fan of it as I want to be. There's a desire to like something. I think we all have innately the desire to want to love or like every movie we ever watch. But if you're trying to force it, sometimes that's just not what's meant to be. And that's kind of how I feel with Apes. Like, I really liked the movies. I think they're good movies. But deep down inside, I'm not a die-hard Apes fan. And no matter how hard I want to be, I never will be. I'll watch the new movies they make, and I'll probably enjoy some of them. But it's never been one that I'm like, I can't wait to rewatch the Planet of the Apes trilogy this weekend. So because of that, I go B. I go B, and honestly, I'd probably go sort of towards the back. I think I'd probably put it, this is difficult, probably right here. Yeah, I take Bourne over it because I have the childhood nostalgia. Cap's got, better movies to me, and then Oceans I'm pretty high on in the prequel. So yeah, in the middle to back of B tier, which is still like an 8 out of 10 type range if we're putting that on a number scale. I like them. I just never rated them as highly as other people. Maybe a rewatch could change that though, and I hope that it does. Next we got the Ant-Man trilogy. A lot of people love to hate on this one. A lot of people do. I look at the trilogy as a whole and I go, okay, the first Ant-Man's the best. It is fun, it's heist vibes, and you can't go wrong with Paul Rudd in this role. He's just so charismatic and likable. Ant-Man and the Wasp is the second film. That's the worst one, and that's one of my least rewatched MCU movies. It's the worst one for sure. And then Quantumania, the third film, wildly overhated. Some people say it's the worst MCU movie ever. I don't know about that. I mean, you've got a top 10, like a borderline top 10 MCU movie, and then Quantumania is like 17, 18 in my ranking right now, which is middle of the road to back of middle of the road. And then you've got the other one, which is bottom tier MCU. Frankly, it's somewhere between C and D. I think it's D tier, and I want to preface by saying I enjoy these movies more than a lot of people. I don't think they're bad movies. I just think on the scale of every other film trilogy here, this one cannot go much higher than D. I'll split the difference. I'll split the X-Men trilogies. We've got the Wolverine trilogy, and then Ant-Man, and then the first 3 X-Men films. Next, we've got the Die Hard trilogy. Again, this is one of those where there's 5 films, but the first 3 films came out in like the 80s and 90s, and then there was a long gap until the 4th film, and then we got a real stinker of a 5th film. So the first 3 movies, really solid action. The first Die Hard is incredible. It's my favorite action movie ever. It's also a Christmas movie, and it established its own genre, sort of like White House Down, Olympus Has Fallen. Die Hard 2, it's all in an airport. It's kind of a rehash of the first movie, but it's still fun and has a Christmas vibe to it. Die Hard 3 is really good. So when I kind of placed this in my movie franchise tier, I think it was C tier. Here, I think I would probably go B tier. I know that tier is getting a little loaded, but I honestly think the first and third Die Hards are amazing, and I don't have to factor in those 2 crappy movies that kind of put it in C. I would go B tier probably. Now, where do I go? Do I go Bourne over it or no? Oh, man. I cut out the 4 and 5s in both, so now I just go straight up. Am I taking Bourne or Die Hard? That's the question right now. Bourne or Die Hard? Gun to my head, I think Die Hard, just because I go the first Die Hard over it. First Die Hard's a favorite action of all time. I really like John McClane as a character too, so that feels appropriate right now. Then we've got the MCU Spider-Man trilogy. The first film I really, really enjoyed. It's a very solid origin. It's like a 4 out of 5 movie. Far From Home, I liked it a lot when it came out. I've rewatched it many times since, and my thoughts right now are it's the worst of the trilogy, and it's not as great as I ever thought it was. It's one of the weaker, if not the weakest, live-action Spider-Man films because it sort of abandons a lot of the Spidey tropes. There's not a lot of web swinging. There's no New York City. Yes, Mysterio is a great villain, but it's missing that Spidey feel to me. No Way Home, obviously the best of the trilogy. You bring back the old characters. Sure, people say, oh, it's nostalgia. It's all about the nostalgia. If Toby and Andrew weren't in this movie, Who would have gotten Tom Holland's Peter Parker out of the little rut that he was in? They have the most important scene in the movie where they're like, I lost Gwen, she was my MJ, and I lost Uncle Ben. They make him rise from the ashes to take down these villains. It is a wonderful movie, and I never understand the overhate for it. People have turned on this movie like nobody's business in the past few months. I've gotten hate for actually saying No Way Home is my favorite Spider-Man movie. Look, I think this is a B-tier trilogy, and B is getting crowded. I'm very aware of that. But B, to me, is like really good, and all the trilogies in there are really good. If you get a trilogy of movies, the likelihood of your films being good consistently is pretty high. MCU Spidey, I think I gotta go right here, over Cap, honestly. Give me Oceans and the prequels over it. Prequels such a homer pick, by the way, I'm aware of that. Recapping this, honestly, I think I'm going to eradicate the E tier moving forward. What is E tier, you know? If you're D tier, that's like the lowest positive remote thing you could have. You're still not really passing. F tier is failure. There's no such thing as an E grade. E is getting eradicated moving forward. So yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below your ranking of all these trilogies. What's your favorite, least favorite? What tier would they all be in? Subscribe and hit that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 85,000 subscribers here on the channel. And of course, check out my Patreon link down below for extra videos, early access to videos, the Discord server, lots of fun stuff. Anything goes a long way over there. But stay tuned for more content coming very soon. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.